Hey y'all, it's your girl Ray Rose, and you are now tuned in to the Miseducation of Gen Z podcast. Class is in session. Hey y'all, it's Ray Rose, and welcome to the very first episode of the Miseducation of Gen Z podcast. Y'all, I'm so excited, y'all. Y'all don't even understand how excited I am to be here today. This has been a super long time coming. And before we start, I just want to get into it a little bit, like if you don't know who I am. I'm Ray Rose. I go by Ray Rose on my social media. This is my very first podcast, very first big girl endeavor, if you will. And I'm from New York. I'm in my 20s. I'm from Bronx, New York. Shout out to the BX. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here today. Finally, after a long time. Like, it's been a long time coming to get to this stage and even being in this space and recording. But yeah, I'm really, really, really excited. So before we dive into the episode, I just want to break down like the title and the name of the show. So the name of the show is The Miseducation of Gen Z. And it was inspired by the Lauryn Hill album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, if y'all couldn't tell. And for those that don't know about the album or haven't listened to it, it's an R&B album. It's an R&B album talking about, you know, growing up life, and Lauryn Hill's, you know, struggles with love and relationships and coming to terms with her being a new mother. And she wrote this album when she was around, I think 21, 22, and dropped it when she was 23. And what I love most about this album is the way that it's structured, the skits, and how timeless and relatable the lyrics are. The one thing I think when I decided that I wanted to create a podcast, I was trying to think of a name that was not already out there, but made me stand out and still stood for what I wanted the show to stand for. So when I started this process, it was about 4 years ago. Not the process of doing the show per se, but coming up with the concept and everything that I wanted the Miseducation of Gen Z to be. And I want to say that when I did come up with the concept, I knew that I wanted it to be something for us in Gen Z. Because around that time when I was listening to podcasts, this is around the time I'd probably been listening to podcasts for a few years at that point, but a lot of the podcasts that I would tune into were made by millennials. And although they were entertaining, I could not fully relate. I hadn't gone through or experienced things in the way that they had. And they were usually people that were in their late 20s, maybe early 30s. So I was like, dang, like there's not a lot of Gen Z podcasters. And at the time, it was still up and coming. Now it's like a huge market. But at the time, it was still super small. And so I wanted to create a space for us. I liked the idea of having a space where it could be curated by us, someone that's of our generation, so me. And I wanted it to be a safe space where Gen Z could be themselves, be comfortable, talk about all the great things that we do. And one thing off of that Lauryn Hill album that I think also structured the way that I was inspired to do this was the classroom skits that she had with young kids and a teacher talking about different life lessons that most people go through and experiences like love. Even though they were super young, I thought it was so profound and still super relatable to this day. The album dropped 27 years ago, and I don't know one person that has listened to it that doesn't feel like it still relates to them in some way. Even if you haven't listened to the album, I feel like once you do, you can find something to relate with. And I kind of wanted this platform to give that same vibe where it's still relatable, still timeless, and it doesn't matter how old you are or what year you tune in. Like, there's something that you get from this that will relate to me, you, her, him, her, him, bodies, 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 bodies. Yeah, a little bit of ADHD, so sorry. But yeah, I wanted this to be something that was relatable for everyone, no matter how old you are. Because I was really young when I started tuning into those millennial based podcasts. So I'm sure there'll be someone out there that's around my age or around the age that I was at the time tuning in. Yeah, because I first started tuning into podcasts when I was about, I think like 18. I think I was first introduced when I was around 16, 17, but I started tuning in on my own actively, looking for different shows and finding ones that I liked when I was about 18. And they would talk about things like their sex lives, dating, marriage, like all these things I could not relate to, obviously, at 18 years old. But I want this to be a space where we can all relate to each other. The big thing that encouraged me to create this was the fact that I was constantly seeing negative comments about our generation. I've constantly I don't know, I want to say I think the time I got on social media was probably like 14. And I would constantly see things about how our generation is fucked up. We ruin everything, and I don't believe that to be true. I honestly believe that every generation has some sort of problem with another generation. Gen X has problems with millennials have problems with us. I think a lot of people have a problem with Gen Z, but it is what it is. But I wanted this to be a space that was positive, where we could talk about positive things that we were doing, positive endeavors, business endeavors that we're, trying to start. Because we're all in our 20s, we're all trying to navigate the world all around at the same time. Because the older half of Gen Z, we're all in our mid to late 20s. So we've been doing this for a minute, but we're still trying to figure it out. And social media today, I feel like, normalizes this idea of that you should have your shit together by a certain age. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. Everybody's progress and process is different. Everyone's progress and process is different, and the way that we all move is different. So I think this is a space where you can relax, you can give yourself grace, because I sure enough will be giving myself grace. I will be giving you grace. I want this to be a safe space where we can come together, have a sense of community, and depend on one another, lean on one another, embrace one another, celebrate one another. And of course, we'll laugh, but I want us to, focus on improving ourselves, working on ourselves, and also fixing those stereotypes and negative connotations that the world seems to have about Gen Z. I think we're great. I think we're bomb. I've always believed that we're the shit. And I think it's time that the world recognizes that we are too. So here, I will be curating conversations that encourage us to grow, encourage us to learn from one another. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything and I know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm parlaying. I'm literally figuring it out as I go, as I'm sure most of us are. But I want this to be a space where you won't be judged for that. Like if you don't know something or you're learning something or you need to relearn something, that is okay. And I think learning helps us grow, and growth is important for us to just evolve. Being stuck in a space where you're unwilling to learn and unwilling to grow hinders your development, hinders whatever healing you might need to do, and hinders your blessings. That's what I believe personally. I've always been a super curious person since I was a child. I'm the child that asks why for every freaking thing. You have to do this and this and this to get this. Why? When? How? What? Like, I'm asking all the questions because I've just been that child. I'm still that. My inner child is still like that. You know, I still ask 1,000 questions. If I'm curious about something, I'll ask my homegirls. I'll ask my mom if I feel like they might have the answer. If they don't, I'll sit there and do the research myself. But I've always been a curious person. I've always been in love with learning. I haven't always been in love with school per se, but I've always loved learning. And I think what makes learning most fun is having someone there that actively wants to encourage you and also is willing to take their time teaching you and doesn't try to make you feel bad about it. And I would love to do that for you guys. I don't want you to feel bad if you don't know something already. I want you to come out of watching or listening to every episode and being like, wow, I didn't know that, or I really love that, or I like that take on that. Getting some sort of perspective, some sort of point of view that you might not have had, or just being able to relate on some sort of level, because we're going to get into everything. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about dating. We're going to talk about relationships, platonic or otherwise. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about growing up, and especially talk about adulting, because we're literally all figuring it out at the same damn time. So I hope that this is what you will be gaining from it, because those are my intentions, as far as hoping that you guys feel like this is a space where you can do all of that. I also want to bring on Gen Z creatives and entrepreneurs and give them their flowers. I love supporting my friends. I love supporting strangers if I feel like they're doing something dope, but I want this to be a space where you can come on, talk about your endeavors, your big girl plans, your big boy plans, big dog plans. And yeah, one thing that motivated me to decide that I even wanted to start a podcast was going through the things that I was going through at the time. I had just gotten into my 20s and it kind of felt overwhelming. I was still in college at the time. I graduated. Shout out to all my college graduates. Shout out to all my college baddies that are still in school doing their big ones. At the time, it felt kind of like overwhelming. Some of the things I was going through, I wasn't seeing my peers or my friends go through. And I was just trying to figure out my sense of identity. I feel like I was changing a lot, like out of high school, out of high school, and while in college. It was just a lot going on. And it definitely felt super overwhelming at times. And I wanted there to be someone that looked or sounded like me that I could relate to on some sort of level. Because like I said, the podcasts I was tuning into at the time were run by millennials. And so they were entertaining, of course, but I couldn't relate to them on the level that probably other millennials could, or people with more life experience could. And as far as, wanting this to be a space where we encourage one another, growing up a lot, I heard positive things. I don't know where that took a turn, but I heard a lot of positive things about our generation growing up, especially in the music. I'm obsessed with music. I'm in love with music. It has a huge impact on my life. It's how I process and go through a lot of my emotions and things that I go through in life. I feel like music has been there for me when I've had close to nothing. So even in the music, songs like I Can by Nas came out 2002. I love that song. I've loved that song since I was a kid. Like I know I can be what I want to be what I want to be. If I work hard at it, I'll be where I want to be. I'll be where I want to be. I love songs that uplift us and speak life into us. And songs like that, I always thought like, oh yeah, I could do whatever I set my mind to. No one can tell me shit. I always believed that. From the time I heard that song came out when I was like 2 years old, but I think I heard it more around the time I was like 3. But that song has always been something that like stuck with me, that I can literally do anything that I want to do. I think it's important. Speak life into us. Be uplifting. A lot of the music today isn't as uplifting as it once was. Some of it is, but songs like that where we're talking up to one another, I think that's important. So today I want to talk a little bit about the process of starting new things, process of just starting, getting into new endeavors, whether it's business or personal goal or whatever it may be. I want to talk a little bit about what that may look like, because it looks different I'm sure for everyone. For me, the process of starting this was a little bit more challenging than I anticipated, because I was doing it from scratch. I have no team. And I was trying to figure out what message I wanted to put out to the world that would also still make me stand out. One of the things that delayed my, progress was being in my own head and comparing myself to other creatives and other podcasts and, just trying not to be like everyone else. And I don't think I've ever really been seen as someone that is easily comparable, but being that podcasting is not so unique anymore, it was a little touch and go for a minute, because I know this is something that I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know, what resources I should utilize or what I should do. But I do think that it took about 4 years to get to where I am today, that was necessary for me, because I feel like every year I learned and bettered how I was working and processing and figuring things out for the podcast. So I am grateful now that it's taken this long. But at the time, when I first started, I had announced it very quickly, because I had spoken to someone that had their own podcast at the time. And they were like, you need to make sure you get on your social media, get all the social media handles. Like once you figure out your name, get your social media handles out there. and just start working and start writing episodes. And I know things that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't know how to turn that into a conversation that I would have with myself to you guys, and also how to just actually break it down in a way where I can talk for a long period of time. I didn't know how to do that because not only was I talking by myself, but I was, I don't have a person to respond to me. I don't have a real outline. I'm doing everything from scratch. So that was a little scary trying to figure out how to do that. I also had this little, I guess, mini case of imposter syndrome where I felt like, well, what the fuck makes me qualified to talk to y'all and lead a conversation that would, essentially impact our generation, a good chunk of it, if not all of it. What makes me qualified to hold that conversation? What do I say? Will people want to listen to me? And there were the pressures of, when are you gonna drop your podcast? When are you gonna drop the first episode? I want to be a guest. What are you gonna talk about? And I was just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know when I'm gonna drop. I said I'm gonna drop when I'm ready. I was also hearing a lot that, well, you could just start in your bedroom. You could just start at home, because a lot of creatives do essentially end up starting at home and they work their way up. But I know the type of person that I am. When I want something done, I want it done the way that I want it done. The way I envisioned it in my head, I need it to look that way. I want it to be taken seriously, and so I wanted a serious setup. And I know I didn't have the funds or the space to do that from my bedroom. And so that was another thing that delayed everything. But thankfully, I found this space when I did. And I'm very grateful and thankful that I took as long as I did, because I can start from scratch and from my very first episode in this space. But there were times, like I said, where I felt like I didn't know if I was the person that should be doing something like this. And that was very discouraging, because no one was saying I couldn't do these things. That was, my head, my own thoughts getting me overwhelmed and worked up. But this is a vision that hasn't gone away. Like, it hasn't watered down. Every time I think about it, I think of how to make it better. Every day I wake up thinking about it and I go to sleep thinking about it. So I know that this is something that God has intended for me to do. And I just want to say, if you feel discouraged to do something that you've wanted to do for a really long time, just go ahead and just start that shit. Get out of your own head, get out of your own way, because 9 times out of 10, no one is thinking the negative things or holding you on the pedestal that you're holding yourself on. I feel like as long as you believe in your vision and you feel like that aligns with you and what you were meant to do, go ahead and do that shit. And I think that's really the hardest part of just starting anything, just literally just taking the first step to start. I saw a video the other day, and it was a guy talking about how it's so awkward to just start running down the street when you decide you want to go for a run. And it is very awkward if you're not someone that has ever just decided to go for a run, for a workout. It's a very awkward thing to just go ahead and just start running. Most people just do a little bounce and they just start off with a jog and they, take off at whatever pace that they feel comfortable with. But it is very difficult and a little weird and awkward. Like, oh my gosh, is it weird that I'm just running down the street right now? And I don't know, personally, as a black person, I feel a little awkward just taking off at a sprint like that. But it is necessary. Just do that shit, because you can start off with a walk, but how long are you going to walk before you decide to put a little pep in your step and jog or something and take off into a sprint? That's why most people, I think, just take off into that sprint and just get that shit over and done with. When you are hoping to pursue some sort of project, literally just do it. Just rip the fucking Band-Aid off and do that shit. I had to do that with this. I got tired of waiting around. I was also waiting for the perfect time to launch, because a lot of people kept asking. I was like, I gotta make this shit like a banger when I finally do put it out into the world. And I think I just kept pushing the date back. From the first time I came up with it in, I think, August of 2021. And I know you're like, girl, why the fuck did you take so long? Girl, I don't know, man. I don't know. But August 2021 is when I came up with the concept of the Miseducation of Gen Z. I thought I was going to launch some point before the year ended. I can't think of exactly when, but when I didn't, I was like, oh shit. And then life around that time started kicking my ass. We'll probably get into those things a little later, not today, but life was kicking my ass, and I was like, God, I can't do the podcast right now. I'm going through this and I'm going through that, and I just can't. And I just kept coming up with 1,000 reasons as to why I couldn't. But like I said, I was still coming up with new ideas and new topics and new ways to improve it all at the same time, even while life was kicking my ass the way that it was. And so when I feel like life started to calm down, I kind of got a little bit more clarity with this, and I was really like, okay, I'm going to get on my P's and Q's and really, do it. I'm going to drop it. So when you guys see this, it will have been, it'll be November when you guys see this. And I'm November 2025. I'm super excited. I think a lot of people get stuck on this idea of perfecting things before they put it out into the world. And I know myself, I've been known to do the same thing. I try to put in 110% into the things that I do when I'm presenting it, whether it's in school or work or whatever it may be. And so with this, I wanted it to give 110%. I wanted a bomb setup. I wanted mics. I wanted lighting. I wanted a team. I knew that team part was very unlikely. But these are things that I wanted for my vision, for my show that I want to present to you guys. And I wanted it to be perfect for you guys. But I think a lot of people get the idea of progress and progress and consistency, confused. Progress and consistency can look very different for many people. It can look like you put in 5 hours every single day. It could be you putting in 3 hours today, 1 hour tomorrow, a half an hour the day after, but 6 the day after that. It's very different for everyone. And I didn't realize that at first while doing this. And so I was starting to feel like, damn, I'm not putting in the work. But I worked on it every single day. Some days I would just work on it more than others because I was in school, I was working, I have, a social life and family. So the idea of execution over perfection is what I've learned to gravitate towards. As long as I'm putting in the effort, I'm putting in the work, I think it'll show for itself, and it doesn't need to be 110% for my message or my intentions to come across. And all of this will be tying into the next episode, where we're going to get a little bit into talking about purpose and the idea of feeling left behind. Because I think a lot of us can relate on the idea of looking for our purpose if we haven't already found it, and the idea of feeling left behind, because I said this a little bit earlier, but social media puts on this narrative. A lot of people on social media put on this narrative that you should have your shit together by a certain age. You should be moved out the house by a certain age. You should have this job. You should be making this much. You should drive this car. You should have all these things. You shouldn't be living at home with your mom. Like, all of these ideas that are very unrealistic for a lot of people. I myself have felt that way, that I don't have my shit together and that I feel behind. And so I think this is the perfect place to talk about all of those things. On this show, I want to have a recap, and I want it to be something that I or my guests have learned, unlearned, or relearned based off of whatever we talk about that day. So today, something that I have learned is to get out of my own way, get out of my own head, when I'm trying to pursue things, and to just let shit be. And I've learned to stop waiting for the perfect time to do things. I don't think that there will ever be a perfect time. There's probably going to be a time where it seems a little less chaotic, or there might be a perfect time. Most of the time, I don't think there's necessarily a perfect time to do things. I think if you wait around for the perfect time, you will be waiting forever. And so my advice and my words of encouragement are, just do that shit. That's it. Okay, guys, so we're wrapping up on the very first episode, but before I go, I wanted to ask you guys leave a comment in the comment section of wherever you guys are listening or watching. What is the first step that you plan on taking towards a goal that you have, no matter how small it may be? And for those that have already taken that first step, what is something that you want to do in order to celebrate either achieving that goal or taking a first step towards that goal? If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and follow me and the podcast on all social media platforms and YouTube. Follow me at Ray Rose, that's with 2 I's and 2 Y's, and follow the podcast page at TMOGZ Podcast. And guys, don't forget we're dropping episodes every other Tuesday, hashtag TMOGZ Tuesdays, and be sure to turn on those post notifications for all updates. I can't wait to grow, laugh, heal, and just have a time with y'all. Thank y'all for rocking with me. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. Bye, y'all.